from Dunthornton. I am your facilitator, host, chair for this session this morning, but you'll not be hearing too much from me. It'll be hopefully the panel and indeed questions from the audience as well. That's the first thing. Second thing is what really the objectives for today, and there's two key aims in relation to this session. First of all, it's to virtually launch the CEF CO3 Leadership Exchange Programme, and you'll hear more about that later. But also to link into one of the key themes of that programme, which is all about collaboration between the third sector and the public sector, and using obviously the challenges of the current pandemic and how we can maybe harness the lessons from that in strengthening that collaboration. So that's the aims. I suppose the third thing just to say is we have a very distinguished panel and also a very distinguished list of participants, so which is great, and it should sort of lead to some good discussion. Obviously, we do have some time constraints in terms of this morning, but hopefully that will work well. I should just say at the start, obviously we're doing this virtually via Zoom, and we have all the various challenges sometimes of an online platform, so hopefully bear with us, and everyone will be able to hear and see what is happening. So in terms of introductions, just a little bit about myself, and then I'll let my partner in crime introduce herself. So I'm a partner at Grant Thornton, look after our people and change consulting practice in Ireland. Secondly, chartered accountant by profession, so spent 10 years in audit and accounting, and then realized I really enjoyed the people thing, so moved into that about 20 years ago. So that's a little bit about me, and I was involved with this leadership exchange program last year as well. So Anne, maybe hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Phillipson, and I work with Patrick, and we will be co-hosting the Action Learning Groups as part of the Leadership Exchange Program, as we did last year. And I'm really looking forward to working with everyone. And I know that collaboration is only possible when you connect with people and build relationships, and you're able to then share ideas and open up and share some of your challenges and receive support for that. So we had excellent feedback from the first cohort, and really looking forward to getting stuck into the program and starting to help you run those action learning groups. So I'll be seeing more of the actual participants once the program is launched.
Okay, thanks, Anne. And I should say, actually, we got a lot out of the program as well, yeah, in terms of observing and listening, which was a privilege actually to do. In terms of the agenda this morning, we are reasonably on time. So a welcome and introduction from myself and Anne. So we're almost through that. And then, and I have to use surnames, Anne Dixon, then otherwise we get the two Annes mixed up. Anne Dixon and Nora will provide some insights into this cross-sectoral leadership exchange program that we're launching today. And obviously instructions has gone out. And then we'll move to the panel discussion, and I'll introduce the panel and they can add to that when we get to that stage, but we're delighted to have David, Moira, Anne-Marie and Michelle on the panel, and I'll talk a little bit more about them a little bit later when we look at that. And then finally, next steps, reprogram and closing remarks. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time just to give you a couple of snippets from the program, and I'll share some feedback from the last program. Indeed, we have a couple of people on who have been on the program before as well. We are hoping to we will finish by 10 past, maybe a little bit earlier, but we do understand people have a hard close sometimes at 12, so don't worry about dropping off when you have to. So that's the agenda in terms of this morning. So I'm now going to hand, who's going to kick off first?
I'm happy to kick off, Patrick, and thank you for those introductions. My name is Anne Dixon. I'm the director of the Chief Executives Forum. And why did the forum get involved in this programme? Well, we talk a lot about collaboration. It's vital across government, across the wider public sector, and with external partners such as the third sector. We know that we can deliver so much more by working together, and we've many, many amazing examples, not least from the last 6 months. But we know that we can and should do so much more. And what we don't say often enough is that collaboration is difficult. Yes, the potential may be significant, but it often involves a journey into the unknown, and it involves risk. And that's something that can cause great discomfort across the public sector. So the Chief Executives Forum wanted to do more than just talk about the importance of collaboration and showcase those successful examples. This Leadership Exchange programme recognises that successful collaborative projects start with good relationships at the top, and they're based on trust. The programme creates the opportunity for leaders from both sectors to get to know each other, to help build understanding of the practical realities of our respective sectors, the governance structures, the culture, and the potential barriers that need to be addressed to create successful collaborative projects. So I want to acknowledge the work of my predecessors in the forum who recognised the potential of this initiative, and to our board members who've been hugely supportive of this work over recent years, and our newly appointed board, which is very keen to see the work grow and develop. Nora and I have worked really closely with Patrick and Anne, who have given really generously of their time and expertise to refine this programme based on feedback from 2 pilot cohorts, and we're very proud to be launching it today. We did debate over the last 6 months whether we could launch this programme in the current context, and we concluded that we couldn't not launch it. It's now more important than ever. So with that, I'll hand over to Nora.
Great, thank you, Anne, and good morning, everybody. For those of you who have met before, I'm Nora Smith. I'm the Chief Executive of CO3, and I'm delighted to be part of our event this morning, and very proud of CO3's association with the Cross-Sector Leadership Exchange. I am conscious that some of you in the room may not know who CO3 is, so I'm going to give a very quick introduction to us. So we are a membership-based charity. We are focused on supporting leadership development and support in the third sector, the charity and social enterprise sector in Northern Ireland. We have 800 odd members. Most of our members operate at chief executive level, but we also have a growing number of senior managers and board members as well that form the CO3 community. And we offer mentoring, leadership programs, providing a strategic voice for our members, highlighting concerns and challenges as appropriate, and also creating networking spaces, opportunities like today, both big and small, for that peer support for our members to build their networks, which will help them ultimately on their leadership journeys. And we do so much more. And I'm happy to pick up and have a conversation with anyone in a virtual room that would like to find out more about our work. And for us in the third sector, you know, as indeed across the public sector as well, our focus is very much on driving forward social change. And you know, I think, you know, one of the only upsides of the pandemic has really highlighted the important role that our sector has played throughout the course of the past 6-7 months, supporting those, responding really quickly, stepping up and supporting the most vulnerable. And you know, regardless of whether or not we're in the middle of a pandemic or not, I'm in awe every day of the week of the work of our members, and very proud to be part of this sector. Though it can be tough, and like any leadership role, it has its challenges, people challenges, keeping the doors open due to financial challenges, being able to respond to high demand for services, and ultimately trying to make a difference, trying to change lives, in some cases saving lives. And our role in CO3 is to support those in those leadership positions, and providing spaces like today, convening spaces, so that we've got some time to lift our heads, to reflect, and I suppose to challenge ourselves to look at what is possible, what's stopping that possibility, and what we need to do in our leadership roles to move forward. And you know, I see it and I hear it all the time, that we recognise that there are no lone rangers that can solve the challenges, that we all need to work better together. So what can we do to improve those cross-sectoral relationships? And for us, it comes down to people, and it comes down to relationships. So the opportunity that the Action Learning Sets provides is that opportunity to step into one another's shoes, you know, to understand our worlds a bit better, to build those relationships, to learn from each other through the cross-sectoral exchange. Has been a really powerful aspect of the previous two programs. You know, ultimately, I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's people who collaborate, it's not organisations. So the unique space that we've carved out as part of the cross-sector leadership exchange offers you that opportunity to meet with new leaders that you wouldn't normally come into contact with, and that's something that we're very, very proud to be a part of. And I suppose the pandemic is proving to be a testing ground for leaders across the world. And it has really demonstrated the importance of leadership in a time of crisis. You know, the decisions we make, the timing of those decisions has such an impact on our people, our teams, as well as the impact that we're all trying to make as in our leadership roles. And with such uncertainty about the future, I think the space today, and indeed the cross-sector leadership exchange, it carves out the space for us to make, I suppose, try to make some sense of our virtual new worlds with other leaders, as well as building those new relationships to get that practical advice and insights that you wouldn't normally have access to. And for that to work, that takes a partnership approach. So our relationship with Anne in the Chief Executives Forum, and indeed with Patrick and Anne in Grant Thornton, has grown over the course of the past 3 years, and it's a fine example of cross-sectoral partnership. So I would like to offer my thanks to Anne and Philip, who's Philip, and
Patrick. Philip once before.
For your support in making this possible. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Patrick, not Philip, to introduce our fabulous panel to hear their leadership insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Yes, you're forgiven. So panel discussion, it's always, I mean, we've been sent out the bios in the joining instructions, so I'll maybe give a little snippet, and it might be useful for the panel when we get into the first question, maybe to add a little bit more background to themselves. Obviously, David Sterling, known to most of you, chair of the Chief Executives Forum. David recently retired in August as head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service. And having spoken to David a few times recently, I know he's been keeping pretty busy. So you're very welcome, David, and we'll hear from you in a second. We have Moira Doherty, Department for Communities Deputy Secretary, with responsibility for the Engaged Communities Group, which is obviously quite a link into some of the things we're trying to do in terms of this leadership collaboration. Anne-Marie McClure, Chief Executive of START 360. I was looking at Anne-Marie's bio. She is a nurse and a health visitor by profession, and she's also Vice Chair of CO3, among quite a few other roles, so certainly someone very busy. And then Michelle Janes from Barnardo's, head of Barnardo's in NI, and obviously Michelle actually was on our program last year, just at the time where she took over the head honcho role. So Michelle might be able to share some insights as well in terms of maybe how the program helped her in relation to that. So panel are all very, very welcome. So the scenario I'm going to present to you, so I'm going to put a little bit of context. So these are not my words, but in the context of, and hopefully you can see that for some of the questions we will ask. So, and I suppose you can read that, or maybe give you just a second. So there's a couple of things jump out to me. So rethinking the role and ambitions of government in terms of being able to build this back better. And we hear this, new normal, back to better, but how you can do that through a spirit of cross-sectoral collaboration. And one of the very strong positives from the pandemic has highlighted not just individual and community action, it showcased the public and the third sector working really, really well together. And it would be great to see that continuing. So there is this opportunity now to present the reset button, but there are also concerns maybe that we might go back to retrench back to where we were. So, and that might be the traditional relationship between the state and community resumes again, whereby the public sector acts as a gatekeeper and where the relationship is maybe characterized by power imbalances. So pretty strong stuff. I should say, those are not my words. Darren and Norris, but actually it provides a really good context for some of the discussions that we'll hopefully have. So the first question, bearing in this context in mind, from your leadership position, and I'm going to go to David, and I'll not always start actually with the same person, so don't worry, David. So from your leadership position, what does genuine cross-sectoral collaboration look like, and how do we get there permanently? And maybe give us 10 seconds on what you've been doing since you retired.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Well, I have been quite busy, and you know, it's a bit of a cliche to say this. A lot of retired people say it, but I do sometimes wonder how I found time to go to work, because there are lots of things, personal things that I've always wanted to do, but also I've obviously taken on this role as chair of the Chief Executives Forum. I'm a trustee on Ulster Wildlife, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, and they're keeping me very busy. And I have a few other interests as well. And probably I'm going to have to learn to say no quite quickly. So it has been good, but obviously disappointed that I haven't been able to fulfill all the travel ambitions that I had, but that will maybe come later. I suppose the upside is I have discovered that there's an awful lot on this island that really probably we don't know enough about, and we should cherish a bit more. So a lot more local travel. But certainly I am enjoying life, and I have to say, as I listen to the shenanigans in the executive this week, I'm not too disappointed not to be there at the moment. Do you want me to go into just a sort of broad response to that question?
Yeah, please, David, yes. And then we'll get some others' views, and then go down, maybe a level down then. Okay, well, look, clearly at a very high level, we absolutely need collaboration. We're preoccupied, particularly at the moment, with COVID. We've got Brexit just around the corner, but we can't forget that we still have got huge problems in this society around mental health, educational underachievement, obesity, economic inactivity, youth unemployment, poverty, paramilitarism, things we've been struggling with for a long time. And we know that these are things that we are still going to have to tackle alongside the two big issues that I've mentioned. We sometimes, I think, focus on resources, but I think resources will continue to be a difficulty. But I think when you look at some of the big challenges we face, resources aren't always the best problem. I think quite often what we see is that we need to be more joined up. That's across central government, into local government, and with the third sector, and indeed the business community as well. And this was something that struck me, following the tragic murder of Lyra McKee. When I was up in the Cregan 2 or 3 times just to see what was happening on the ground, and a huge range of organisations, central government, local government, third sector organisations, and the challenge almost was, how can we work better together? And I think the thing we've learned from COVID was that the crisis forced us to work in different ways. And indeed, there are many, many examples of superb performance that came about through collaboration. And I suppose the question we have to ask ourselves is, why can't it be like that all the time? Why can't collaboration be the norm and not the exception? And I think there's 4 things that I think are important in this, and I'll be very brief here. The first is, I think we need a strong common purpose. Everybody needs to be working by and large towards the same goals. And we will get that, I hope, from the next programme for government. We need that strategic framework. We need the outcomes-based approach to delivery, and we need a shared view on the outcomes we're all pursuing. And when we see in Scotland what they've been able to do with our national performance framework, I think it gives us a sense that if everybody has a clearly understood set of common goals, it'll be good. I think from all our perspectives, we need to continue to press the politicians to give attention to this, because they quite often are distracted by other things.
I think the second thing is, and this is an easy thing to say, we need to get to know each other better. I think as Anne said there, when you look at all the good examples of collaboration, they have come about largely because people have got to know each other and have trusted each other and have built relationships. And we need to do all we can to actually foster and encourage and promote better engagement between the sectors. And I think what we're talking about today, the collaboration between CO3 and CEF, is a great example of that. The third thing is, I think we need to share examples of good practice, and we need to celebrate the good things that are done. And really, I think by focusing in on those, I think you will encourage other people who maybe do not readily see the opportunities that will come across from collaboration. And the fourth thing is, and I think this is the most important thing, all roads take you back to leadership. Leadership is the most important thing here. I think we need to work together, and we need to learn together. And again, the program that you've described, the cross-sector leadership exchange, is a great example of us learning together. And I think as we learn together, we will become more effective at collaboration. I think we need to go beyond that as well. I think we need more movement between the different sectors. We need more secondments. I think we need to give people experience of working in the different sectors. But I think the most important thing is that every one of us, as a leader, whether we're in the third sector, central government, local government, we need to role model good collaborative behaviour. And we need to make sure that where we see examples of people not working together, that we call that out and challenge that. So that would be my sort of broad response to your question.
Thank you, David. Some very thought-provoking stuff and really good. If I could maybe get the other side now, if I maybe go to Anne-Marie McClure, maybe to answer that question from the third sector perspective.
Yes, indeed, and I would agree totally. Good morning, everybody.
Do you want to give us a 5-second overview of yourself, something that I haven't covered, maybe?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Anne-Marie McClure. I'm Chief Executive of Start 360, which is a regional voluntary organisation that delivers a range of interventions and services to young people, offenders, and their families across Northern Ireland. I'm privileged to be Vice Chair of CO3 and delighted to be here today to launch the programme. I'm also Joint Chair of the new term of the Joint Forum. I'll speak about that a little bit later. And I also am Chair of NIADA, which is an alliance of the providers in Northern Ireland of alcohol and drug services. So yeah, indeed, I would have to agree with David. It's all about leadership. And of course, all of us have to acknowledge, whoever we are, that we have leadership skills and use them then daily. But in terms of senior roles and chief executives, we really have to recognise what effective leadership is. And certainly, I think over the last 7-8 months, you can see how people have been working much better together. And yeah, I mean, it boils down to, for me personally, down to, communication. One of the big leadership skills that we need to learn from about how we connect with each other cross-sectorally. And one of the issues around building relationships across the sectors is one of parity of esteem and respect, and acknowledging that the professionalism and expertise that exists in one sector also exists in all sectors. And I was interested, just as you highlighted the need for secondment, David. I myself was a secondee from the public sector into the voluntary sector for 15 years. RPA brought an end to the secondment. And I actually acknowledged, and when I was reflecting, preparing for this this panel, I recognized that there was a collaboration and partnership between the sponsoring organisation, agency, and my role in the voluntary sector, which evaporated once I moved into the voluntary sector as a standalone outside of the secondary support and understanding. So there is that, you know, risk that all that we've built, and you know what, I think we also need to underline that was a lot of this going on before COVID. COVID actually put a spotlight on it and magnified it, because I mean, you know, our sector has always stepped up. I think COVID has highlighted how we have stood out, and you know, and the relationships that have been developed with our public sector colleagues, which I mean, from personal point of view, have been outstanding. We need to empathise and understand each other better. We need to build on knowledge and share knowledge. And until we have trust, that can't happen. We need to focus on opportunities, not on the risks. I mean, we have to acknowledge risk. We need to mitigate risk. But if we focus on risk, we miss the opportunity of moving forward with innovation and new work. And we also need to share not only knowledge, but tools, you know, like business continuity planning, scenario planning, financial and operational experiences and solutions. And we need to use the existing structures that we have. Northern Ireland's a small place, rather than, you know, developing new structures to collaborate. We need to actually galvanise and build on what we already have. So I'm the new joint chair, along with Sharon Russell from Department for Communities of the Joint Forum. And we've just had, we're just in the very early days. We've had a very brief induction, and we're moving forward to our first Joint Forum workshop. And one of the things that we need to see, I think, is you know, some action, some change moving forward, and how we go about that. So it's really an agreement on what are our priorities, but more importantly, what are the actions that we're going to take to ensure that we achieve something in that time. One of the issues that from our sector that continually, you know, cause problems and building trust and moving forward is that, you know, we actually need to build leadership and collaboration within our own sector. But that's very difficult when you look at the backdrop that our sector has to deal with, which is competition. And one of the major issues around the competition is the question of whether a system of procurement, which was initially used for paper clips, toilet roll and paint, is indeed the commissioning framework moving forward for our sector in terms of delivering quality and services for disadvantaged and vulnerable individuals. And the other thing that the Joint Forum are very keen to move forward on is addressing bureaucracy and using that report, 2 recommendations that we'd really like to focus down to. And what's wonderful at the moment is the appetite across the forum from our public sector colleagues and ourselves to actually move forward with achievable action.
Okay, Anne-Marie, thank you very much, and plenty of food for thought. There have been a few comments made as well. I'll maybe just come back to a couple of those after we hear from Margaret and Michelle, because there's one on the programme for government that how relevant it is for the new programme for government for the third sector, which we want to pick up on. Okay, if we go to Moira now, can you hear us, Moira? Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, what would you like me to pick up?
Yeah, just maybe a 10-second intro, and then maybe very briefly, your thought in terms of achieving this from a leadership position, and then we'll come back to some of the other areas after we hear from Michelle.
Okay, so I'm Moira Doherty. I see a few friends and colleagues around the room who know me already. For those of you who don't, I'm the Deputy Secretary with responsibility for Engaged Communities Group within DFC, which means I have a very wide and fantastic portfolio that includes culture, arts, language, sport, heritage, lead for the voluntary and community sector, and also our public records office and neighbourhood renewal, which many of you will know is a place-based anti-deprivation programme. So I have a really rich portfolio, and I have been also over this last 9 months heading up some of the work on the emergency response programme in partnership with colleagues from the voluntary and community sector. And I'll give you a very quick blast on that for anyone who wasn't aware. Deirdre Hargey, who was our minister in March, under her leadership, we initiated an emergency response programme led by an emergencies leadership group, which was essentially a partnership group between ourselves and colleagues in the voluntary and community sector to deliver an emergency response programme. And through that partnership, we set up a regional advice line that handled almost 30,000 calls. We, in partnership, delivered over 200,000 food boxes. We set up a volunteering pipeline to get prescriptions to people, and a whole pile of other stuff. And I feel a great sense of relief whenever I'm going through those stats now, because at times, particularly in March, it was pretty hairy and we weren't actually sure if we were going to be able to deliver it. So I would echo the points that David made about common purpose and leadership and relationships. And I think we, as members of that group, went on a journey over, and everything's COVID time. So what would normally take months, it was absolutely concentrated into days and weeks, and then sometimes hours. We completely recalibrated, I think, the dynamic and the relationship. At the beginning, we kind of went into those meetings and we took our traditional stances of public sector and voluntary sector colleagues, and realized really quickly that actually that wasn't going to get the business done. So we had to, we worked in a very intense way. I'm immensely proud of what we achieved together. Like it's genuinely the privilege of my career, and I can say with 100% confidence that the changes that we made there, we accelerated and probably went beyond some of the ambitions that we had anyway, in terms of recalibrating the relationship. And I can say with absolute confidence that we're not going to go back. We need to build on that. That's the floor, not the ceiling. And that's an absolute guarantee. And on the leadership bit, I will just say as well that I was incredibly privileged to have the support of my boss, Tracy Maharg. So I knew, I had that confidence that what we were doing was absolutely lined up with where Tracy was. And I would say that Tracy has fantastic attuned risk appetite. So Tracy gets that risk is dynamic, and your appetite and response to risk needs to be dynamic. And I felt very confident that I had her support in doing what we needed to do. I would probably throw a slight spanner in the works in that I actually think common purpose, right? And that's what we needed as we went through. But actually, one of the other things that was really beneficial was creative conflict. So I want people to give me a hard time in a constructive and respectful way. That's right. And I want people to feel that they can pipe up, as they often did. And one of the best things about that group was that we had some people on there who were grassroots community workers, and they were absolutely amazing, because some of us would be kind of pontificating about how we thought things ought to be, and maybe getting into quite ideological debates about inequality in society and so on. And then somebody would pipe up and go, aye, but that's not going to work in Derry. Or yeah, we're already doing that. Or whatever it was to kind of bring us right back to being grounded in this has to be about delivery, and it has to be about getting support quickly to the people who need it most. But also in the back of our minds, that piece that, you know, what does recovery look like? What does the future look like? And that's now, if we were able to draw a breath, we really want to work with our colleagues to say, what does that future relationship look like? And some of the things that Anne-Marie has brought up need to be at the heart of the programme for the Joint Forum. And I'm going to make two little pleas to my NICS colleagues around the room. One is that you have a lot more power than you think you have. You have a lot more power than you think you have, and you can make more things happen than you think you can, or you can stop a lot more things than maybe you think you can. You know, but you have more power and influence than you think. But also that joint forum, we need a reboot of that joint forum from the NICS side, and I want people actually knocking my door down to get a seat at that table. So that's something else that I'm going to have to pick up en famille, but just to kind of put those couple of wee markers down.
That's great, Maura. Lovely, and I love your term creative conflict. I might use that again myself. Thank you for that. Michelle, the question, I did maybe jump ahead with one other question, but I suppose the key thing to put to you after a short introduction is, what does good collaboration look like for you, and how do we get there?
Okay, good morning everybody. Michelle Jades here. I'm head of Barnardo's in Northern Ireland. I suppose a wee bit about Barnardo's is that obviously we're a UK-wide organisation, the largest children's charity. Across Northern Ireland, we have 40 plus services delivering to, gosh, now around 12,000 children and young people and their families. So we have good reach right across the whole of the province. A bit about me, I didn't always live in the third sector. I'm a professional social worker by trade. I lived and worked in lots of different places before I came back here a while ago, and I worked for a long time in the public sector. So I can see things from two different ways, with different lenses on. Worked very closely in different departments, and I'll talk a bit more about that and how that then informs how I work now. The COVID emergency has presented a challenge like no other. We've been around for 154 years, and this is something that is very, very challenging for all of us. We kept open, we kept going, and you know, I'm very proud to say that I lead a team of about 560 now of people in Barnardo's across Northern Ireland who stepped up and really stood out throughout this pandemic. But it didn't surprise me that they would do that, because the collaboration that we've seen during the pandemic took me back to the work that I was involved in, and I'm really delighted to see other colleagues who were DFC then, like Joan O'Hara and British Red Cross. I see Sharon Sinclair's on here as well, with the Syrian refugee crisis. And that really was, and I suppose some of the lessons from that for me were about a department came along and said, this is what we need you to do. And Michelle, you know about children and families, and Barnardo's knows about children and families. And we respect that, and we trust that you will put them at the heart, and you will get on and do that. Sharon in Red Cross, you know about emergency planning, get on and do that. And what they did was they empowered the voluntary and community sector to actually deliver on a very specific piece of work. So what they did, what for me is to learn about that is that we need to have the eyes on the outcome. We all need to be focused on the outcome. We're all interested in the same outcomes, and it's like having different people in parts of your house that you can pull on. There is a lot of expertise across both sectors, but you know, sometimes the work is with individuals, and that worries me. There's lots of really creative, solution-focused, flexible, responsive, passionate, motivated individuals in both sectors. But it needs to be about the whole organisation, because people move on, and then you're left with oh, can we really do that again? And people get bound up with the bureaucracy. So we need to suppose, recognise we're all working towards the same, we all want to go to the same place. We want to get rid of poverty, we want to improve mental health, we want to improve educational underachievement for our children. We want to see things get better, so we need to be focused on the outcome. The other bit, and everybody has said it, and is about relationships. Relationships. That is what it's all about. It's about, you know, getting to know people. It's about seeing who can help you navigate systems that are really challenging. It's also being brave enough, and Anne-Marie talked about it, I think Moira did too. They've been brave enough to actually take the risk. There were times in the Syrian programme, there were times during COVID that we were thinking, oh my goodness, that might be too difficult. Nothing's too difficult. There's always a way around it. It doesn't always have to be really, really difficult. The last programme for government we did see outcomes-based accountability embedded within it. I'm very disappointed, to be perfectly honest, that I'm still having conversations with commissioners across Northern Ireland about outputs. They'll say, oh, 80 bums and 80 seats, Michelle, that's great, tick, there's your money. It's not about 80 bums and 80 seats. Was it any good? Did it make a difference? How do we know it worked? Did it have an impact? So we need to look at how our relationship with commissioners, you know, how we do that an awful lot better. We need to move away from transactional relationships from these commissioner-provider relationships and move more towards strategic partnership model. We need a step change in how we see each other, and I've talked about relationships. It can't be transactional. The public sector needs to recognise the worth and the expertise that's here in the third sector. We both have expertise to bring to the table. We've seen it during COVID, especially. We can be greater than the sum of our parts. So it's pulling all the people that's in your house together to actually deliver something really good. Anne-Marie flagged this earlier as well. We need to recognise our own worth and the expertise the public sector brings. Our sector delivers life-changing work to the most vulnerable in our communities, and we need to recognise and take our place in cross-sector relationship. It's not us versus them. It's what outcome we can achieve together, and that's the exciting bit. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, Michelle. Before we go to, and I'm keen to get some suggestions or points from the chat before we go probably to one other question, and we'll have to ask people to be brief. But maybe David, if you could pick up, there was a point around the programme for government. Obviously, good support for the placements and working in each other's sectors. But how do you reconcile maybe the new programme for government to the third sector?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting comment from Andrew, and I do think it is worth discussing. Certainly my view would be that the next programme for government needs to be developed in conjunction with society as a whole, and that includes absolutely the third sector. And indeed, those principles are enshrined in the New Decade, New Approach document. And certainly when I was involved in the talks last year, all 5 parties were very clear that the next programme for government did need to be developed on a sort of co-design, co-production basis. So, you know, I think my view would be if the next programme for government is developed properly, we should end up with a set of outcomes and consequent actions, which I think everybody could buy into. And I think that would give us a framework that we could all work within, where we have a shared view of the outcomes we're working together to deliver. Just picking up on a couple of the other points there, I absolutely take the point that the third sector need to feel that they are getting the respect, particularly from central government. And I think I'd be the first to admit that we haven't, you know, have to take my old hat off, but we weren't always in central government properly respectful of the third sector. And I think there would have been a tendency in the past for central government to consult whenever it felt it had worked out what the right answer to a problem was. That's not the best way to go about things. Again, as many people have said, people in third sector organisations have got a much better understanding in many occasions of what is actually happening on the ground, and we need to buy into that. So we absolutely need to work in partnership with people. And again, on that basis, there's a clear need to move away from a transactional type relationship, a procurement focused relationship. It needs to be much more of a partnership type of relationship. And, I certainly would echo the points that Maura made about the great work that has been done in recent times. And I can say that certainly Maura and Tracy are two people who I think are excellent role models when it comes to encouraging participative, collaborative behaviour. And there are many more as well. So just a few quick reflections there.
Okay, Maura, or Anne-Marie, on the joint forum, there were a couple of people that weren't aware of it, so we're sending out some communication on that, are we? Who would like to pick that up?
Oh yeah, definitely, Patrick. The joint forum, the members have just been identified from the voluntary community sector point of view. On the 1st of December, we're going to have our first workshop. So most definitely, one of the things we need to look at is our communication strategy, and more people need to know about the joint forum, its functions, and its priorities and what it can achieve.
Okay. All right. I'll maybe come back. I'll probably just maybe, I'll maybe just focus on this question, and maybe it links to some of the things around the people leadership aspect. So I'm going to ask the four panelists what they're going to commit to try and do over the next year in terms of actually trying to make this happen, because Anne Phillipson and I would often talk about leadership and management development and training, and to me, and I'll give you my view that hasn't changed in 20 years, leadership and training is about three things. It's about knowledge of what's happening in your own area outside of that, and it could be knowledge of new practices, techniques, things like that. The second thing is skills. What are some of the skills you need? And if you don't have them, how do you develop them or bring in others? And then the third thing is about behavior. And the big challenge we have, particularly in organizations, it's not just exclusive to third or public sector, is driving behavior change. And actually, it's not the people that are anti-change or very pro-change. It's a group in the middle, as I call them, the head nodders, who do this and have no intention of actually doing anything any different. And often you don't know who those are. So that, to me, is sometimes the big challenge in driving that change, and it's often back to the people dimension. So that's my penny's worth on that. So if I go to Maura, so what are you going to commit to? And if we could be brief in this, because I do want to do a quick summary on the program. So what is your role in maybe achieving this from your leadership position?
So Patrick, it's already clear what my commitments are in terms of, we have a kind of a white paper, if you like, in terms of rebooting that strategic relationship between government and our partners in the sector. So that's a lock, that's happening. The other thing then is to put more energy into making the joint forum the powerhouse that it ought to be. And I guess then looking internally, this is a little bit, I'm sure it's the same for colleagues around this room. We now nearly have two groups of folk internally, those that have been on this journey, this very intense, immersive experience, who now get it and are operating in that way. And I have a responsibility to, encourage les autres and make sure that actually this is just the way that we work now. And it's not just for those people who were at the pointy end during the COVID response.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, Anne-Marie, I'll go to you next on that. So.
I would agree with Maura. I suppose one of the things that I will certainly be doing is giving time and energy to the joint forum in my new role, and working very closely with herself and colleagues in doing so. And it's about bringing those threads from my own experience, from the other groups that I am represented on, or chair, notwithstanding the CO3 and the work that we do there, and ensure that our members get the opportunity to move forward in collaboration and build those relationships. We do need 10 high-ranking officers from both sectors to join on this programme. I think it's a wonderful vehicle to start that learning together. And I mean, I suppose we talk about resources all the time, and it is about time. And I mean, I am fully committed to putting time and energy and an appetite towards moving forward in this area.
Okay, thanks, Anne-Marie. Michelle, we'll go to you next, and then David, and then we'll maybe just open it up for a few minutes if anyone wanted to say anything. So just sticking with the timetable. So,
okay,
Michelle.
so what am I going to do, Patrick, over the next wee while? I suppose I see my role very much, and it has been throughout the pandemic, to keep everybody connected and together. And I suppose in doing that, when you're in crisis mode, you connect with the ones that are closest to you. So really, it's been within my own house, but I've been within Bernardo's. But I suppose my bit is about reaching out even further, and getting involved in a lot more. I suppose I see my role about amplifying the best practice that we're generating. I see it about making connections, seeking opportunities to work more collaboratively with more people. There's going to be a lot less after the pandemic. There's going to be a lot less for it to go around, and my bit is to pull on the resources that we have right across all sectors in order to ensure that we can focus on what's best for those that most need it. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Can I just say, Patrick, a wee bit about the programme, just in terms of because so I came on the programme last year and met people who I probably would never have met before. And I do, as I said, because I've got a public sector background, I do have lots of connections, but I did meet people who I'd never met before. And what I learned, I suppose one of the key things was that some of the challenges that we have in the voluntary sector are exactly the same. My house, what happens in my house happens in other people's houses, and we work together to find solutions that would work in our sector and in the public sector as well. And those relationships, I suppose, it can be quite a lonely place as the head of an organisation, is what I'm going to say, because you're having to take all the decisions and the risks, and things finally stop with you. And what it was actually that peer support and checking in and just talking through difficult situations at times with somebody who wasn't connected was actually, it just really, really helped. So I would be an advocate, and hopefully you'll see more Bernardo staff on Action Learning over the next wee while.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. And I think it was very timely for you because you'd just taken on the top role as well, and working with the GB guys. And actually, I remember that it was a difficult time, but a good time for you in terms of using it. David, so what are you going to do briefly? And then we'll maybe have, if we have a couple of minutes for any other points from the audience, and then I'll do a quick sum up.
Okay, very quickly, I'll go back to the 4 points I made at the start.
Yeah.
And I think to the extent that we have influence, I think the forum will need to exert influence on the executive in terms of the next programme for government. And again, to the extent possible, encourage ministers to live up to their commitment they made in DNA, that it should be designed on principles of co-design and co-production. I think the second thing is, and again, this is all about getting to know each other better, and that is, just consistently looking for opportunities to bring people from the different sectors together, so that those relationships based on trust can be built upon. The third thing then is, I think we will need to find ways where we can work together to celebrate and highlight examples of good practice, because I think they can be really, really powerful ways in which people can be encouraged and incentivized to do collaborative things themselves. And then fourthly, on the leadership point, we do need to build on what's being done through the cross-sectoral leadership exchange program. We need to make sure that that works and works well and encourage people to join. But we need to find other examples where we can work together. And we talked about secondments, etc. as well. So those are all things that certainly we in the forum will be looking to develop over the next year.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I suppose we've had some really good points from the observations from the audience. Somebody said secondments, great idea. A couple of people actually, but maybe difficult to do during the pandemic, and that may be a challenge. But again, I suppose we have used sort of various platforms to get around that, but that has been a challenge. Does anyone have a final point from the audience? We're happy to give you the mic and video for 30 seconds if you want. Anyone have a burning? It's obviously difficult in such a large group. Okay. That's don't be shy, but we had, thank you, Antoinette, others, some really good points, Andrew, Judith, and also appreciate those observations. So next steps, program logistics and administration. So just a little bit about the program, and literally I will only take about 3 or 4 minutes so on this. So the expressions of interest opened for submission on the 26th of October. We are limited to 10 people from each sector, and that will be 4 action learning groups. So the deadline is next Wednesday, the 18th of November. There will be a selection process, so we get that balance right in terms of complementary organizations, bearing in mind that actually we can sort of fine tune that when we're up and running. Maybe just one thing I want to bring up here. What is an action learning group or action learning set? It's where a group get together. So it's not mentoring, it's not coaching. It's very much, it's a combination of all three and sometimes a bit of counseling thrown in. So it's where you bring a challenge, maybe that you're having within your own organization around maybe people, succession, board, it could be processes, and others will give a point of view. And it's very confidential through that particular group of 5, and they tend to stay together during the program. We sometimes swap people in and out depending. But Anne Phillipson and I, our role in this really is to encourage listening. So some of the skills, asking open, probing questions. There's a bit about reframing, but it's really about sharing, and that environment. Someone in a completely different organization or sector to yours can sometimes bring a different perspective that you previously hadn't thought about, or things that you may not even share within your own senior team. So really powerful technique. In terms of the key dates, so we have this is the virtual information event, and it's great to see a couple actually of people, in addition to Michelle, on this information event that have been on the program last year. You do have to commit to the dates. So if you're thinking, well, I've got something that now there is a little bit of flexibility if something happens urgently and people. But you do need to commit to the dates at this stage, those dates over the next sort of 3 months. It'll be organized via Zoom, but it'll be in breakout rooms. What it doesn't provide is, we do talk about sometimes best practice models, but it's not about training you on various tools and techniques. It's about the whole process of actually looking at difficult issues, and that collaboration element in terms of getting everyone to sort of think through a difficult problem. And it brings out the best in coaching, the best in mentoring, and the best in that sort of collaboration aspect. So that's why it works really well. So I think that's, oh yes, sorry, I almost forgot. Feedback from last year, and so these are actually really, really strong feedback. Helped me change from an operational to strategic thinking, talk to other CEOs, help to recognize that problems are not unique, and that's already been alluded to by some of the speakers. Recognize the need to engage differently, or issues would continue. Really good feedback. And again, Anne or Nora can actually talk it through in more detail, or did reach out to ourselves. So I think that's everything. It's a quick canter through. Sorry, we maybe didn't get time for more debate and discussion, but it is difficult with such a large group, and we still have over 50 people on, so that's really good as well. So, okay, will we leave it there? Okay, listen, thank you very much, everyone, and look forward to meeting some of you on the program in due course. Bye.
Thanks, Patrick. Bye.
Well done, Patrick, if you're still there.
I think he's gone.
I'll pass along your congratulations
Oh,
to him. That seemed to go very smoothly.
Well, given the limitations of Zoom, I thought it was pretty good. As a panelist, I always find it a bit frustrating that you can't see who's there. It's a strange experience talking to a PowerPoint slide.
And then looking at yourself on the screen as well, you're sort of, it's quite disorienting. But there was lots of chat, so we'll follow up and make sure.
We've got some really, really good feedback there on the chat function, which we'll capture and take that forward. It's really good.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much.
A couple of people were asking questions.
Yeah.
So brilliant.
But we definitely should do more things like this, working together. We definitely should.
Definitely, because I suppose I worry about how you capture the learning, and then people move on and then the learning goes with them, and that's the difficult. It was really good because I saw people on that who'd been involved in previous programs with me, but they've moved. Somebody's echoing, and you lose that, and that's, you need to be able to hold on and that momentum, because it's those people who really do lead change wherever they are. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to capture, and especially the really good stuff from COVID, and embed that in things going forward. Anyway, I'm going to, there's Patrick back. You heard us talking about you.
He called me, and then I said, we're still chatting and praising you. So he thought I'd better get back on here.
No, it's I'm always nervous if you don't formally lead the meeting, that others, it can sort of people can stay on and stuff like that. So I was a bit nervous about leaving. That's it over. But sorry, I meant to. Were you happy enough?
Yeah, I think it went very well. Yeah.
That was excellent, and I really would expect a good boost now on the numbers for the program.
Yeah. Hope so. Okay. All right. Well, I go on. Sorry, Patrick.
Oh no, I was going to say, Michelle, if we're, the difficulty is if you have 30 people, it's very, very difficult to do. But maybe on Zoom it's a bit easier. I don't know. Well, maybe look at that actually, Nora, and because it could be a little bit easier in terms of if you're not physically in the room, as the challenges we had the last time. But let's deal with that if it arises.
A bigger group, Patrick? Is that what you said?
Yeah, no, I think you can't go beyond five or six. I think it's really difficult. But you could actually have 6 5s, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think if that opportunity comes up, Patrick, if you've 30 people come forward now, I think you should take that,
Yeah.
And again, if it works, it works, and if there's learning from it, there's learning
Yeah.
from it. But
Yeah.
I do think it's actually a time when people do need, will need these sort of skills going forward, but also they'll need those relationships going forward, because things are
Yeah.
going to be so different.
Yeah.
And I think to give them the opportunity, especially for mentoring and coaching right now, you know, people need to be taking a breather and stopping and reflecting, and I think that that's the opportunity that the program gives you.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree
And
more.
it's really no more challenging if Patrick and I, you know, if we both take three breakout groups,
Yeah.
we're just really popping into the rooms. And when we do the plenary sessions, it doesn't matter if there's 3 people on or 300 really. So we probably could take 6
Don't
groups.
say
rather-
300, Anne.
No, but you know what I mean. If you're speaking to the group, it doesn't matter how many are dialed in. But in terms of the action learning groups, if we keep those to 5, but we could have 6 groups of them.
Oh yeah, you could. And actually, and once the groups get up and running, they tend to be very much self-managed. You know, they manage themselves.
Challenge we have this year, normally we're oversubscribed for this program. This year, now there's been lots of interest, but probably only about 5 or 6 that have actually said, I really want to do it and have protected the dates, where normally I'm saying no to people.
Yeah.
And I think it is a sign of the times as well. So I would love 300 on, love it. But I'm not sure, just given where we are and where everybody's headspace is. And Michelle, you're right, and thank you for plugging the program directly as part of the panel discussion. I think somebody that has done it, and you know, your endorsement offers more power than what we could ever do. But there is something just about people feeling that they're still in firefighting mode and worried about their budgets as well, whether or not they can afford to.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but hopefully we'll get there, at least 10.
Okay. All right, I'm going to pop off now. Thank you very much for inviting me. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Bye.
indeed, and thanks to all the organisers. So yeah,
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All the best, everyone.
Yes, thanks, Pamela. I don't know if you're still there.
I'm still here. Thank you.
And Claire is probably gone as well. I forgot to mention the Future Leaders program, but we'll do that another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to reconvene, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, cheers, folks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.